Welcome to another Canopy Conversation. In this episode, we're excited to speak with filmmaker Ant Timpson, whose new adventure film, Bookworm, is now on Canopy. Ant, thanks so much for joining us today.
It is my pleasure, Christian. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Uh, as we begin our conversation, you have undoubtedly one of the most interesting career paths in cinema. Uh, Given that Canopy is available to so many university students around the world, I think our viewers would love to learn a little bit about you and your work. As a means of introducing yourself, could you touch on some of your career highlights, whether that be as a festival organizer, producer, writer, and now director?
Sure. I mean, the first thing I'd do is recommend no one should take the path I have in terms of a career. It's not exactly the one that was supposed to play out when I first went to university. Had high hopes of attaining a law degree, but everything went off the rails, and I ended up going to my first love, which was cinema and working on film. So I kind of had a crazy background where I worked in theaters and ended up managing an art house and then starting a distribution company, and then got into like showing films like Slacker, Richard Linklater's first film down here, and just sort of fell in love with working with audiences first and foremost. So that was kind of my background. And then putting on film festivals, and I ran a film festival for up to 30 years. And then I was probably the oldest debut director in the world when I finally decided to stop producing other people's dreams and get back to what I wanted to do, which was make films. Because I started off as that, everyone has that sort of dream of making home movies. And I did that whole route with making little crazy horror movies with my brother and friends. And so I thought I was going to go do that, but I sort of got derailed into other areas of the whole industry, and it took a long time to come back. And it was really the sudden death of my dad that kick started me to like, oh man, time is precious. Let's get back into it. So that's kind of where I ended up, making Come to Daddy, which was just a fantastic experience working with Elijah Wood, who is on board the new film Bookworm. And but don't leave it too late. That's my advice. It's like get started and stay with it. But the whole landscape's changed. I could talk for a long time, so I won't bore everyone. But it's very different from when I started out. Film was considered the art form medium of the century, and now it's like vying for TikTok or other even below that. So it's a very different landscape. So I feel like storytellers have just adapted and are working in new areas. And I'm very much a Luddite, and I'm very old school, and I'm immersed in that world of film. I handle film prints all the time. I collect old movies. So yeah, no one should take advice from a dinosaur is kind of what I should end with.
I love it. Uh, can you speak for a minute on your physical collection? Because at least according to your Wikipedia page, you've got
Mm.
the largest 35 millimeter print collection in the Southern Hemisphere.
Private collection, I think it is. Yeah, it's a
Okay.
or personal collection. Yeah, because there's obviously massive archives that I've sort of worked with in the past. But yeah, as a personal collection, I think it's right up there. It was up there when we've knew the scene. I knew it very well because it's quite a small scene of all the collectors who collect old archival prints. These are usually 35 millimeter, and we've got quite a few thousand of those and 16 millimeter. And have made them available to film societies, cinematheques around the world. And then, my brother has a great old theater that's over 110 years old, and he still runs 35 millimeter there. So we play 35 there when we can. But yeah, just love the tactile experience of film. Just grew up handling it, and for me, it's always been a very analog experience. And so, not that I'm a complete snob and won't watch anything on digital, but I wish my films were shot on film. We talked about shooting them on film for a long, long time, but for budgetary reasons. And also, we were remote on both films. It would have taken a long time to get the rushes back, which is
Yeah.
what they used to call the dailies. We would have been 3 to 4 days to even see what we were shooting, which is too dangerous for investors these days. But yeah,
Yeah.
so the collection's really big. It's stored at the theater. A lot of it's stored in Austin, at the Alamo Draft House and the Ag for people there. They're really old friends of mine. So yeah, I store a lot of prints there.
That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, as someone who actively goes out to watch Prince, I was excited to see that in your biography, because it's a dying breed at this point in time. So much of and the promise of digital is not really lived up to what it was promised to be, right? Like not everything's available. There's so many lost films out there, and I'm sure you get contacted by various archivists and restoration outfits that are looking to restore from original 35 and get their film looking like it did when it was initially run. So I love to hear it. That's an amazing story.
Yeah.
So thank you for that introduction. As someone with a windy career path, myself, I know our viewers, especially university students, will value the many ways you can get involved and even work in this industry. So now let's transition over to the film. Please tell us about Bookworm. As the filmmaker, how would you summarize the story?
You know, at its core, it comes from a fear of being a parent. Toby Harvard, the writer who I work with, we both had a singular fear of not stepping up in a time of crisis for our kids. And kind of, it happened to me on a vacation that turned into a vacation from hell, where I should have stepped up as the heroic dad that you're supposed to do in those scenarios, but I kind of crapped the bed and freaked out and everything. And just that look of when you see that your kids are looking to you for safety and security and you don't deliver, it's kind of crushing on a level that it's hard to comprehend. So it was kind of, Toby and I always mind personal trauma for comedic effect. So we wanted to tell a story that utilized that genesis of the germ of that idea, and kind of spread it out in terms of a wilderness film, which we'd been talking about wanting to write for a long time. We're both obsessed with man against nature kind of films, survival films. But we wanted to sort of do a kind of family version of that, not make it The Edge, the David Mamet film, but that film originally was called Bookworm. So, and it was directed by a Kiwi called Lee Tamahori. So we stole that title and said, okay, we're going to make Bookworm. We're going to make a wilderness film. It's about male, insecurities, our male neuroses as dads and as parents. And we're going to use Elijah Wood, who's the perfect avatar for us to hang all these neuroses on because he's so likable. He can play a complete plonker. And the audience, he'll still win the audience over no matter how much of a sort of drongo he is. So that was kind of the basis for it. And then we thought, what's a great foil for someone who's like a pathetic man? And we thought like a really, the trope is the precocious 11-year-old girl to be his foil, but we wanted to kind of play with that a bit because that's kind of played out in a lot of ways. So we thought, let's find the perfect young actress to be that role, and to have them as estranged at the start, and then over this whole journey through the wilderness, they become like they sort of we strip away the artifice. They're both wearing masks when we start this journey, and then they sort of we expose them to the wilderness, and then we learn a bit more about each other, and they learn a bit more about each other, and kind of bond through the journey.
It's an outstanding story, and we'll get a little deeper into it. But again, the family dynamic is outstanding. But I actually want to touch on another aspect of your film from a genre angle, if you will. Bookworm has clear connections to adventure films, whether we're talking about the upbeat Swiss Family Robinson or the more dismal Deliverance. Audiences seem captivated by the idea of setting off into the wilderness and surviving the elements. What adventure films did you draw on for reference, and how did you attempt to differentiate Bookworm from those other works?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously Toby and I are a slightly different age, so my kind of inspirations were all 70s based films that I grew up with, that were kind of general family entertainment, where they weren't very preachy. They didn't talk down to the kids. They had a kind of dark edge to them. Some of them, even the Disney films of that period, had a kind of dark edge to them. And Toby's more like, he's an 80s kid, so he's more inspired by the kind of Goonies
Mm.
sense of adventure. Stand By Me, that kind of vibe. So it was a amalgamation of those kind of two worlds, and then coming up with a kind of, our own sort of distinct voices, shaping everything in terms of the comedy. But yeah, we didn't. What I love about the '70s is that they did have that darker edge to the kids' films back then, and they weren't kids' films. They were just, we called them family films, and they played across the board. But I wish we could have had access to real wildlife, which was a staple of those films, where the actors were literally rolling around with cougars and grizzlies and things. And it's such a different time now looking back. It was, Swiss Family Robinson's an extreme example, where people are riding around on ostriches and stuff that you'd be cancelled overnight for doing. So it was kind of like, a celebratory sort of look at that time in life where kids weren't wrapped in cotton wool. The sense of adventure as a youngsters felt limitless, and nowadays, kids just, they don't have to look, they don't have to walk and wander to find out what's over the hill. They go on Google Maps and go, oh, I don't need to go there. It's completely changed the aspects and the sort of the sense of wonder that I had as a kid. I used to think I was going to drown in quicksand or fall down. My plane was going to go down the Bermuda Triangle. There was this kind of mystery to the world. And it's that, like that Repo Man, like the more you know, the less less you know. The more I can't even remember the quote I'm trying to do, but there is a fascination of being let loose as a youngster by your parents, and not having that kind of helicopter parenting that exists now. And so the film at its core is really about that. Is just letting a kid sort of lead the way into the great unknown.
Yeah, it's fascinating, the reversal of roles, where she definitely plays more of the leader and he's more of the follower. Uh, and the experience level is very similar, which is again is a fascinating component, because she's read about it but hasn't necessarily lived it. And he's completely removed with very little knowledge of how to survive the outdoors. Uh, with respect to the wilderness, I definitely, as an American viewer, want to dive into your setting. Uh, I'd like to talk for a minute about the absolutely stunning settings within Bookworm. Viewers, exactly, your view behind you. Viewers around the world have certainly seen the grandeur of New Zealand in other films, most notably Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings saga. Uh, but here we get to see this country without the filter of Middle Earth. Can you tell us how you chose some of the picturesque backdrops you use in Bookworm? And if you want to drop some specific locations, I think our viewers would definitely appreciate that, because they might Google Earth it.
There you go. Yeah, I'm sure we're not going to have the draw that Lord of the Rings did for tourism. But look, I grew up. I didn't grow up down there, but my family history is all from down in around that area, a little bit south of where we were shooting. So I've got a great deep fondness for the area, and it's sort of like the Canterbury region. Right from Arthur's Pass down to Methven is kind of the big sort of sweeping area that we shot in. And so a lot of the same areas. It was fun to take Elijah Wood, on a similar path. He went through a lot of areas that he shot on Lord of the Rings 20 years before. We had some of the crew from Lord of the Rings on our film as well that he knew, which was pretty fun. So yeah, and we because it's so obvious, he kind of looks like a young, the young Aragon Chronicles when he's dressed up in his Strawn outfit. So it kind of like, it was not inside of baseball, but we knew what we were playing with, and sort of there's some sort of references for people if they want to deep dive in the film that alludes to Rings, but also we make fun of the Chronicles of Narnia. We shoot exactly where a lot of that film shot down there as well, and we refer to Liam Neeson as the talking lion in the movie. It's very kind of meta self-aware about our film is taking place in a movie universe, like it's not heightened realism. The emotions are very real and very human, but it's very much a kind of heightened, elevated, a fable in a way. We're not going for realism by any means, but yeah. So behind me is the Horden Plain, which is an amazing area, and that kind of like was the main setting for the start of the film, where they get dropped off in the bus and we open up to a cinemascope experience from being boxed in the opening. And so from here we kind of go everywhere. We go, that way is to Castle Hill and where all those Narnia rocks are, and then that way is to Arthur's Pass with just in stunning mountains and things. And then we helicoptered them all over this area as well for some incredible remote action where we could just drop the cast down and then go back up with a camera and shoot them in these really remote areas. But tough for logistics for shooting a film. We just had to deal with the content of the film, but the producers had to deal with the nightmare of trying to put a huge crew up. Like, where do you sleep these people in these remote areas? It's like, it's not easy. So, and then the weather was just so, there's a song by Crowded House called Four Seasons in a Day that sums up the New Zealand weather systems. It can completely change. One day we had 31 degrees Celsius, which I don't know what's in Fahrenheit, but it's bloody hot. And then the next day there was snow. So, that's how crazy it got. So yeah, so I loved it. I loved rolling with the punches. And because once you make a few things, you just realize that all these sort of what feel like hindrances, if you embrace them and go with the spirit of it, it all turns out in a positive way. Surprisingly, the only thing that got us was COVID,
Oh,
which
wow.
had a lot of films. Yeah,
Yeah.
Elijah got it the minute he got off the plane. So yeah,
Well, and it is so picturesque. The scenic vistas are absolutely beautiful within the film, and it enhances. I mean, it's makes the film such a pleasure to view in that regard, because you're taken to a world, at least from an American standpoint, that's so distant from us, but again is a little bit familiar because again it appears in so many other films. Uh,
yeah.
Viewers outside of New Zealand may be unfamiliar with the local legend of the Canterbury Panther. The myth has parallels to the Sasquatch in North America and the recurring sightings of creatures like the Tasmanian tiger. What was it about the Canterbury Panther that sparked your curiosity so much so that you wove it into the plot of this film?
Well, I'm a long time cryptid fan. I was a kid who saw the original film Sasquatch that terrified me in the early 70s. And then became obsessed with Bigfoot and always wanted to make a Bigfoot film. And then my friends went off, the Zellner brothers went off and made Sasquatch Sunset, which was one I was hoping to be involved with. Um, and then so we had to think of, I was like, how can we incorporate a cryptid into Bookworm? And it was a natural fit because of the mythology of the Canterbury Panther down in that area. And there's a lot of areas around Australia and the UK and other European countries that have the same big cat mythology. It's not uncommon by any call at all. And so New Zealand's just got a long reigning one, about one in the Canterbury region, whether it was an escaped zoo animal, which is one of the sort of theories that has been, was interbreeding with big feral cats. And they've hunted down a lot of feral cats that are huge down in the area. They're really big. They make domestic cats look like, like fetuses. So these things are kind of big. So you don't have to extrapolate too far to think like maybe there is a really large cat. And in the film, we include a little bit of footage that certainly doesn't look panther sized to me, but it's real footage shot by someone down there. But yeah, it was just nice to embrace something that I've had an obsession with for so long, and incorporating a narrative that's kind of fun and hopefully pays like a fond tribute to the history of that area and the people. We met someone who had a eyewitness sighting, and he wasn't looking for publicity, didn't want to be named or anything. He just told us in a pub, off record, about his encounter, and it was totally believable. There was no, it wasn't exaggerated or anything. It was just a scary encounter that was far too big to be a domestic feral cat. So it lives on. It's still, no one's caught it.
And that's part of the excitement around the mythology around again any number of creatures. What I'm thinking about, The Hunt with Willem Dafoe, and The Search for the Tasmanian Tiger as being another cinematic example of that type of story. Uh, This is the second time actor Elijah Wood has appeared in one of your films, having starred in Come to Daddy from 2019. How did you cast him in Bookworm, and how has your working relationship evolved over these two films?
Well, it was a no-brainer casting him again. The script was written for Elijah, so we would have been in difficulties if he had said no. There was a way for him to bring his family down and incorporate like showing them New Zealand because it was such a formative time of his life, when he was down here for Rings. So it was an easy sort of sell to Elijah. He loved the character, he loved the whole script, and thought it would work really well. Had some notes about it. And it was just fun collaborating again. Like we had a lot of the same team from Come to Daddy, the prior collaboration, and so it just made sense to reuse a lot of the same people. We even got Michael Smiley back, who's one of the actors from Come to Daddy, and yeah, it's just joyous. Elijah's just so he's been working since he was a baby basically, so he is usually the most experienced person on set, and he's just a joy. Like the fact that he still loves doing this stuff. There's no sense of lethargy or even just bitterness from doing the same thing over and over. He's just full of energy and life, and yeah, he's just the most lovely guy on earth. So it was so easy a decision to say let's go do it all again. And we've got plans to do another one as well, and use it's part of a trilogy we want to make with Elijah. So um, happy to do it. Yeah, and thank God he still looks super young. He's going to be, we can exploit that as long as it can go. But yeah, looking forward to doing it all over again.
No, that's exciting news, and to hear about a possible trilogy in the works is outstanding. All right, so to close things up, as a father, I found the relationships presented in Bookworm to be incredibly relatable. The father-daughter dynamic between the characters of Strawn and Mildred vividly illustrates the daily challenges and successes we experience in our lives with our own family members. Can you discuss this element of the film and why it played such a central role in the narrative?
Yeah, well, I mean, the father-daughter dynamic just felt like it was more compelling in terms of like, emasculating the father even more so. I don't even know if that's a sexist comment to make these days, but it just felt like there was more comedic effect to make that character a daughter and not a son. And also just more interesting for me. I've got two sons. And it just felt like more of a challenge for us and for Toby to write it that way. But in terms of the dynamics and everything, that whole parental offspring relationship and those kind of like the ongoing war that you have with your kids, and a good natured one, but it is a battle, man. Raising kids is an ongoing battle, and then there's like small victories throughout the way. But the crazy thing about stepping back from the film and just all the plot mechanics and everything else, it was just really the obvious thing about what came through, which is great, is that all they want from a parent is for them to be present, which is what our character eventually learns through the course of the film. But as a parent in our real life, that's kind of it as well, is just to be there. You don't necessarily have to step up in a time of crisis, which is like the elevated form of it, but it's really just to be there, to be present. And so starting them off as estranged, and the wild history he has with the mum, and we just thought was like a great sort of starting point for that kind of combativeness between the characters, and sort of extrapolated those kind of minor feelings that we have with our kids, that we don't feel like we're ever doing enough for them, and we beat ourselves up. So it's just a way for that kind of internal struggle to be sort of painted on a broader canvas for audiences, and in a funny way, because it's not so funny sometimes in the real world.
And it's a universal experience. It's something we all can, feel those connections, those challenges, I like the small victories. On a daily basis, I try to count, okay, did I do all right by them today? Because it's not
Yeah.
always, the track record can be a little bumpy at times, but yeah, and as we send them off into the world, It's memories like what it's presented in Bookworm, that are I think are so formative. So between the setting, the backdrop, and the relationship, this all comes together in a fashion that makes for just an absolutely fabulous film. So, and we appreciate your time today, and we encourage our viewers. Bookworm is available on Canopy now to our U.S. Public Library viewers and university viewers. So check it out today and let us know what you think.
I'm Mildred, and I'm commonly referred to as a bookworm.
I'm top of my class. Straight A's all the way. School is like heaven for me academically and socially. I'm borderline obsessed to tell the truth. I like hunting. Fishing. Look at this great big bugger! You know, stuff of adventures.
You don't
Talk like a normal child. I know.
Hello. Mildred, it's me, your dad. I just flew halfway across the world to be with you, little lady.
Great.
I'm sorry for the whole absent father thing. What's this?
This is the Cantebury Panther. No one's ever caught definitive proof.
I could take you?
We leave at first light. Hey, stick with me. You'll be fine.
You know where you're going, right?
So, what does the average day for an illusionist look like?
I do appearances.
Wow.
You think it's easy making 100 balloon animals for Vin Diesel's kids?
What the hell is a Vin Diesel?
I heard a creepy sound.
Really? You're 42, Dad?
What did I ever do to you?
Most daughters see their dads more than once a decade.
Mildred, it's all right to be scared. I'll look after you. Go, go, go!
You can't do it!
Yes, you can! Nice kitty. Okay, that's officially the craziest thing I've ever seen.
I know. I'm pretty dressed, too. So, can I make one thing perfectly clear?
What's that?
This tent is a fart-free zone. Clear?
Clear.
Good.
I'm so sorry.
Christ.